Oh, Courtney says try now.
And it's progressing.
She says the stream feed was wrong, but should be correct now.
Okay, you are live.
All right, perfect. How are you doing, Rochelle?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So, hey guys and gals, welcome to day 2 of the Multicultural Mainstream. Sorry for the little bit of delay here. We had technical difficulties, the things we deal with on Zoom every day. So, we will continue to delve into the issues that we've been talking about since day one. We want to talk about venture capital industry. We want to talk about women in the cap table. We want to talk about diversity. So I'm happy to kick off day 2 with this fireside chat. And thank you, Rochelle, for sitting here with me today. I really appreciate your time. For the folks listening who do not know Rochelle very well yet, Rochelle is a managing director at West River Group. It's a venture capital firm based in Seattle. So she co-leads the experience sector with Eric Anderson, which is a super fun sector to delve into, by the way, who's the CEO. She has too many honors to list, honestly, so I'm going to skip that part. But she serves on the board of Elf Beauty, Best Buy, and LabCorp. So she's everything that you think of when you think of the word of power woman. So to start off, I would love for you, Rochelle, to share your path. You've been in many different roles throughout your career, from eBay to Visa, and now you're a venture capitalist and a chairman of a startup. Can you talk a little bit more about your journey?
Sure. So thank you, number one, for inviting me, and it's always great to have a conversation with you. So I'm looking forward to our time today. I started my career really as a marketer. Coming out of college, I went to Drexel University, and I worked for Citicorp Telemarketing Services, doing teleservices and teleservices marketing. From there, I went on to Digitas, which is a leading digital agency. Before it was called Digitas, it was called Bronner Slossberg Humphrey, so direct marketing. And then I joined our digital group in 1996, so the early days of the web. So I was doing large-scale site builds. So I built the first e-commerce site for AT&T, for IBM, for American Express, for Motorola, you name it, I did it. And then we had this crazy idea that we could actually send people to these sites with marketing. So the early days of banner campaigns and affiliate networks. And then we said, you know, what if instead of using email just for your statement, what if we used email as a marketing tool? So it was the early days of content management systems and email templates. And so I did that for about 13 years. I was at Digitas, and my last role there is I ran Digitas Chicago. Then I worked for another agency for just a year, running all of global strategy. But I got a call from Visa. Visa had just had its IPO. It had a brand new CMO, and he was looking for leaders on the business. So I ran consumer marketing at Visa. And so I had everything from all of the sponsorships, so Olympics and FIFA.
Oh,
and
wow.
I owned all of the marketing analytics. I owned Visa.com. I owned all of loyalty. So I had this very, very kind of varied role at Visa. And then I took on a role of running all of marketing innovation. So the best way to think of it is the future of payments. So this is the early days of wire transfer and money, wire transfer, and I owned mobile. And so when you think about Visa Pay today, that's a strategy that I wrote back in 2010.
Oh,
I got a
wow.
phone call from this incredible company called eBay. And at the time, I wasn't really interested, but they were looking for a CMO. And the reason I wasn't interested is because I was running global, I was thinking about the future of payments, which was such a big deal at the time. But the more I talked to the leaders in the company, the more I just fell in love with them and fell in love with the strategy. eBay was going through a turnaround. And so it was a real opportunity to come in and make a big difference. And so I was the CMO of eBay for 5 years, from 2010 to 2015. And so I ran everything from global brand to global performance marketing. I ran all of North America marketing. And so it was just fun. It was great to be a part of this big turnaround and to become the darlings of Wall Street again. And then in 2015, I took a break, and I was tired and I was going to take a year off. It became a year and a half. And I was just trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And that's how I ended up getting into venture capital. So I started at a private equity firm that I was at for 3 years. And that's where I really just learned the business of investing. And then I joined West River Group about a year and a half ago.
That's fantastic. And you make it sound so easy. I feel like, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I feel like you kind of like grew up with that online marketing just as it was like kicking off and starting off, and like kind of helped grow it, helped build it. It's crazy for me to think that, because I was kind of, I woke up and then there were email marketing, it's just like.
Exactly. I mean, frankly, I've joked that I'm the old lady of the internet. So we were pioneers back then. It was so new. We didn't know how far this whole thing would go. I mean, I remember when I was leaving the direct to consumer part of the business and going to the digital business, which was brand new. I remember people telling me, "Oh, that internet thing will never take off. You're going to lose your job." And now look where we are. The internet is, such a big part of our lives every day. But it did require me to take a risk, but it seemed like a risk worth taking because it was fresh, it was new, we were learning along the way. I mean, there were so many mistakes that we made, but we learned, and here we are today. And I look at those beginnings, and it's been an incredible journey.
That is fantastic. So I just want to put a pin on your transition from, being an operator to being an investor after your break. I want to come back to that topic later. But I understand that you also have the role of executive chairman in your title. So I would love to understand how you decided to not only step into the venture world, but also to, just open up a startup and let's see how it goes.
So that's an interesting story too. So when I was at Camden Partners, we had a company in our portfolio called Rainier, which was the largest manufacturer of store brand oral care products. And we decided to actually spin out a direct to consumer business, which is called Shine. So it's shyn.com. And it was, kind of the early days of oral care subscription businesses. They're definitely competitors in the space, but there's so much market share to be had. And so I launched this business. I hired the CEO, and so he runs it day to day. But we talk in some way every day, whether it's a phone call or a text message. And I have some stuff I'm going to work on for him today. And so it's really a partnership. I act a bit like his consigliere, me just giving him thoughts and advice. The interesting thing about the business, it is really a marketing-led business. The products are the products, but frankly, it's really about the marketing. And so I act a bit like a consultant for him and provide marketing support and thoughts and introduce him to great talent. And so it's been fun. I don't know if I would want to be a startup CEO, but being a startup executive chairman is actually incredible. And it allows me to see what's happening in the early days, to understand how you think about scaling these early businesses. Because remember, when you look at my career, I've really only been on very big brands. And so to have this kind of early stage company has been great.
That is fantastic. And I think like your career progression is also a good testament to how far marketing has come. Like with you started with, just marketing, and then you grew up this, you like expanded this online marketing from email to mobile. And then now this is a DTC company. Like you only deal with internet.
That's right. That's right.
Fascinating.
And just the idea of not only, how do you create that first sale? How do you get the first sale? But how do you continue to show the value to get that subscription? And that subscription is so important to the business model. And the thing that we have that a lot of companies don't have is we have a really, really great product. And so we don't find people dropping out of the subscription. Typically you get like pretty high dropout rates. People drop out, particularly around the month 3 or 4. We don't have that because the convenience of getting those brush heads every quarter, the fact that you need to switch it, your dentist tells you to, and then it's just really great products. So we've been able to learn along the way. It's been very valuable for me, and a lot of those insights I'm able to use on my board. So you talked about Elf Beauty in particular. That's probably one of the closest analogs. And then for the companies that we look to invest in, like just getting a sense of where they are, what they've been doing, what they understand about their customers. Like that's the stuff that I'm, continuing to push on and learn through my little startup.
That's fantastic. So I'm just kind of curious, out of all the roles and different hats that you wore and then you're wearing now, what would you say was or is your biggest challenge? What was the most difficult part for you and how approach that topic?
That's a hard question because I don't really look at it that way because I really face challenges as a learning opportunity. The eBay challenge was a big one though, and it was mainly because the analysts had counted us out. They said, "Hey, all the value lives in PayPal, and so sell off eBay." And so just this idea of how do you change the perception of a brand, and that was my big role as a CMO. So back then, and probably still a bit now too, but back then we were known as old used garage sale stuff that you buy at auction versus what we were, which is brand new items with tags that you can buy right now. And so just helping customers to understand who we are and why they should continue to buy on eBay. And so I'd say just that heavy lifting of such a big and important brand was a big deal. And changing the brand, I'm the person that changed the logo. Like there's just so many things that were big that we had to do to actually have a successful turnaround.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's a great advice for what you just said, that you don't think of it that way as a hardship, but you think of it as a learning opportunity. I think, you can learn so much in the process, whatever you face, if you kind of have that attitude. So thank you so much for that. So I want to come back to an earlier topic we touched on, and then maybe delve a bit into your transition from being an operator to being an investor. So everyone, I think, has a different journey in getting into the venture capital industry. Some come from, 10 years of investment banking experience. Some were founders of the companies. Others were lawyers. What was your motivation behind the switch from being an operator to being an investor? And then what do you think that operating experience provides you with? Like, is it providing you with a leg up with the different perspective? I would love to hear more about your thought there.
Sure. So when I left eBay, I really thought I was going to go back into an operating role. I was looking at CEO roles or president or COO roles that lead to CEO. And I just wasn't finding anything great out there. I was doing a talk at my family church in Baltimore, and there was a guy who was in the audience, and he just kept asking questions. And at the end, he came up to me and he said, "Hey, you said a few things that I didn't know." One of the things I had talked about in my talk was the difference between mentors and sponsors. This idea that mentors speak with you and sponsors speak about you. And the challenge that most women have is they have a lot of mentors, but they don't have a lot of sponsors. And he was saying that in his company, he had a lot of women CEOs, and he had never thought about the level of support that they would need for them to continue to grow in their roles. He just never understood that women and men in leadership have different challenges that they're faced with. And so we talked about that, and he said, "I'd love to figure out how to get you in my company, whether it's chairing one of my boards or being on one of my boards or being a partner in my company." So that's how the whole thing started. And then he just checked in every couple months, and about 7 months later, he said, "Hey, I'm starting a consumer fund, and I want to have operators. I need operators." And so that's how I joined Camden Partners. I started out in private equity, and now I do more venture. But to answer your question about the operating piece of this, I absolutely think being an operator gives me a leg up, just because I can go into these companies and I can give the CEO advice on how to build and scale the business. I can give marketing teams advice on how to think about brand or social, or how to think about their performance channels. I've been there, I've done that. I've typically done it at a much larger scale, which is different, and I don't want to discount that. But the learnings and insights that I have are just, I think, incredibly helpful.
Absolutely. So I think there are a lot of founders who are listening to this fireside chat in the audience. So I want to just pick your brain for a second and talk about your philosophy of investing. What do you think makes a company stand out? Like you want to go and say, I want to invest in this company.
Yeah, so we hear pitches from a lot of different companies, and I enjoy that part of the process. I think just my marketing lens, yeah, I just enjoy that. But what really stands out for me is I need to see the passion of the entrepreneur or the passion of the CEO. I need to feel that they believe in their business. Even when I ask them tough questions or challenge their thinking, the fact that they come back to me with conviction, just because they have an insight around something that I don't have, that's important to me. I also want to know that you understand your customers, that you understand their needs, that you can anticipate where they need to go next, and that your product is something that is truly meeting an unmet need. So what is the gap in the market and how are you filling it? And so, those are the things that I really look for, particularly because we're investing in early companies. They're often not proven out. We invest mostly in companies that have revenue, but not necessarily profitability. And so that's important. I do actually care that your model works, though. And so the stage of company that we typically invest in is ones where the model has actually been proven out. And so, I want to know that not only can you be brilliant at the basics, meaning the concept that you decided you were going to launch, but also that you have this innovative drive for what's actually next and how do you think about building and scaling to what's next. And so those are the things. So just to repeat, I'd say it's the conviction of the entrepreneur or founder or CEO. It's their understanding of their business and conviction that their model's right. It's how they understand their customers and the customer landscape, and how is their product meeting some unmet need. Like those are the things that I look for first, and then of course we dig into the numbers and all. But that's what I look for initially.
Yeah, I cannot agree with you more. I think ideally you will have A plus everything, right? You will have an A plus TAM, you will have an A plus product market fit, you will have an A plus team of leadership. But if I had to choose one, I think it would be the people, because you can have a product that is, let's say, A minus, but if you have an A plus team, then I think they can really make it work. If you have the other way around, however, I've seen instances where products are not kicking off well, like all these different things. So I think people are the most important. So I can agree with you more on that. So I want to shift gears a little bit and then talk about diversity in the venture capital industry, which has been a really big theme for last year and this year as well. Well, I feel like actually for the past decade, but yet out of 150 billion in the US venture investment last year, teams with at least one female founder captured, I want to say, like 10% of venture funding. And out of that 150 billion, only 1 billion went to Black startup founders, which is less than 1%. So let's start with a fundamental question. What did you first notice when you entered the industry?
I noticed that I was one of the only. So to be a Black woman in the venture space is rare. There's not many of us, and then when you do find them, there's not many who are raising big funds, and it's embarrassing, frankly. And what I find is that the industry is really very cookie cutter. It looks for the same thing over and over. They want to. Because they've had success with one type of entrepreneur, like that's where they focus, or because the person that shows up and is asking for the money looks a certain way, that's where they focus. And it's really embarrassing. And so when I think about these numbers, it's really a bit of a trap too, right? So to raise money, you have to have a track record, but to have a track record, you have to have done it before, and to have done it before, you have to raise money, and to raise money is hard, particularly when you walk into a room and you don't look like the guy that just was in that room before you. And even as someone who is an investor, right? So I know what's going on in this industry, and we are often approached by people who seem to be more open to diversity. Even when I show up in front of folks, in fundraising for Shine, there's a lot of no's. There's a lot of no's, and so it does have to change, but it requires it. And what I always talk about, particularly for diversity, is it's really from the top down. It has to be something that you care about at the board level. It has to be something that you care about at the CEO level, at the management team level, and then it needs to push through your organization. And so you got to remove those roadblocks and those barriers that that don't even give people an opportunity to walk in the room. Like, that's the challenge.
I think that is totally right. And then I want to delve into what you just said a little bit from the top down. I was just going to ask you, we understand that this is a problem. We understand why this is so difficult. So what can we do to solve it as investors, as founders, as everyone out there? And you said the top down approach. Could you go a little deeper into that?
Yeah, so in my experience at big companies, the only time something really happens is if it's mandated from the top and if it shows up in your goals, period. And so that's the same thing here. I mean, for our company, we've said that diversity really matters, and we've built that into our strategy. And so each one of our funds is co-led by a man and a woman. We're thinking more about ensuring that we're pushing more on racial and ethnic diversity. And so we built that into who we are. And so that's really from the top. That's our CEO saying that we want to be different. We want to give access to capital to people who look different. And so you have to start there. You also have to deliberately make sure that you have diverse entrepreneurs and CEOs in your consideration set. You have to not continue to look for the same mold that you've had, up until this point. And then, the thing that we care about also is just making sure that the boards of the companies that we invest in, that there's diversity there too. And you just have to keep weaving it in and making strides at every sector and section of this equation. It's not hard to do. You just have to care enough to do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I know we're coming up on time, and I have one last question for all the folks listening. This is a question that I ask, really smart power women like yourself a lot. If you can go back to yourself 20, 30 years ago, to when you were starting your college, when you were thinking of deciding what you want to do for the next phase of your life, if you can go back and give yourself one advice, what would it be?
That's such a great question. Don't worry.
I love that.
So I believe that you have to have an idea of where you want to go. So I knew early in my career that I wanted to run marketing, right? So that's the CMO job. Maybe I didn't know it was the CMO job then, but I knew that I wanted to be a boss. And so I feel like you have to declare, you have to at least put something out there of what you want to do. And then there are people that you meet along the way. There's the path that you're on that actually help you to get there. And sometimes that path is straightforward, and sometimes you're running on it, and sometimes you're jogging, sometimes you're walking. Sometimes you have to go left to end up going straight. Sometimes you have to go backward to end up going straight. And so I know that the journey isn't always linear and straight ahead. And so I don't think I didn't really know where I'd land. I was willing to take risks. And that's the part where I say, don't worry. I took some risks in my career, and they all paid off. And I think those risks have been the reason I've been able to get in some of the rooms that I'm in, and have given me some of the opportunities that I've been able to have. So don't worry is what I would say.
Thank you so much. We do have one audience question before we wrap up. To Rochelle's point about change having come from the top and show up in the goals, how can managers and senior managers at early stage startups who are not part of the C-suite inspire bias towards action for inclusivity?
Yeah, so frankly, in my experience and in my career, data always helps. So don't be afraid to get your voice out there. Don't be afraid to push on the leadership and the establishment. But often your voice isn't enough. You gotta bring some data with it. And so there's so many great reports on diversity and where things are. And you can help to create change by showing people where we are today and helping to create the vision for where we can be. And don't be afraid to say, hey, you know what? I looked at our board and how come we don't have more diversity at our board? And just ask the question. Then people will say, you know what, crap, we don't have enough diversity on our board. And so you just don't be afraid to lend your voice in positive ways and to be able to push, but do it with data.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think it's really important for us to know that diversity is not a charity. It actually brings in better results if you look at just the data. So I think that's been super helpful. Thanks, Rachel, for your time today. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you on Monday.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun.